Hey, my name is James Nicholson and welcome to this month's property news. There is so much that happened this month. In fact, video views on the channel, because there was so much happening, were 50% up in September. So thank you to everyone that watched our content in September, and thank you to everyone that subscribed and hit the bell. Little hint, go and subscribe and hit the bell notification. We've got new content every single day. October, we have got tons of videos. In fact, we're so stacked up at the moment. Some days this week, we will be doing 2 videos just to get through all the content that we've got. Now, this is the property news. We've got lots to go through here. But before we do, if you haven't done before and you haven't done on this video already, smash like, tickle like, do something to that like button. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm. It gets more views on the channel, and let's grow it by 100% maybe this month. Let's see what we can do. So let's get into this. So there is so much going on this month. First, the most popular topic on the channel was the Renters' Rights Bill. I've got a full in-depth video on that. Nearly 100,000 people have watched that. So do go and watch that. But let's just quickly recap on the Renters' Rights Bill on main key points from that. So the Renters' Rights Bill is basically a bill that is to protect tenants, which is good, but it scares a lot of landlords. There's some stuff in there that's not particularly great for landlords. You've got the obligation to consider having pets. I don't see that one as a big one. You've got rolling tenancies now. So a tenancy, once this bill goes through and becomes legal, which will be about a year from now, at that point, new tenancies would become rolling, and they would have 2 months notice by the tenant at any point. Now, landlords are a little worried about that someone could just take your property for the summer, immediately on moving in, give you 2 months notice, and then move in, and then you've got all the costs of finding a new tenant. That means that you must use a decent estate agent that vets and protects you on some of that. They're not going to be perfect all the time. There are going to be horror stories, particularly when we get hundreds of thousands of landlords watching this channel. I'm sure we're going to hear people in the comments that have had a bad experience once that rolls out. So that's worrying a few people. You've got to make sure that the property is up to a suitable standard. If not, you can get taken to an ombudsman, particularly in relation to mold. That's something that a lot of people had opinions on in the comments here. Just saying, just open the window and ventilate. But yeah, if it's proven that mold is because of a fault with the building, you've got to get that rectified very quickly, which is fair enough. But that's something that worries landlords again. The biggest worry for landlords in that bill, though, is the Section 21 removal. That's no-fault evictions. And for a lot of landlords, that's their security blanket. If they want to get their property back, or let's just say they have a tenant that's not paying the rent or damaging the property, they can serve a Section 21 right now and get that property back quite quickly. If that goes, you'll have Section 8, which goes to court, which can take 6 months or longer. And that worries a lot of landlords, especially if you've got a non-paying tenant. By the time it ends, it could be that they owe you nearly a year's rent, which are unlikely to get. So the Renters' Rights Bill has a lot of landlords up in arms. Tenants obviously are pleased because they want to improve their standards, and I agree with that. But I think some sort of compromise needs to be made on this, because I think what tenants don't understand is a lot of landlords are leaving the market, and that is what's pushing rents up at record rates at the moment. So the Renters' Rights Bill, as it comes out and more information is told to us, I will talk about that on the channel. Rents, let's talk about that as I mentioned it there. Rents are up 8.5% on an annual basis, 4 times inflation at the moment. Now, this is driven by interest rates going up for landlords, so those costs are being passed on to the tenant. It's being caused by a lack of rental stock. That's getting worse, so I do believe that rents will carry on going up higher than inflation over the next few years. And it's something potentially Labour aren't talking about it, but maybe at some point, if it carries on at this rate, you might get rent caps. And that hasn't worked in a lot of places. Look at Scotland, where there's a severe lack of rental stock now, and you can get as many as 30, 40 people looking at one property. While the rents might be more affordable, to get a rental property is very, very hard in areas where they've implemented that. So rents are going up. That's something to watch. We'll keep talking about that on the channel as we get new updates. Next, EPCs. This is part of the Renters' Rights Bill, but it was brought out by Mr. Miliband, and they talked about it at the Labour conference last week. This is another piece of content that I made a video about that got thousands of views on the channel. So do check the older videos if you want a more detailed explanation on any of these topics. EPCs, they're saying, need to be a level C or above. A level C or above by 2030. Now, more details will need to be released on that. They're saying some properties you can't get to a level C. If it's an old Victorian building, a listed building, maybe with sash windows, it might be hard to get to that level. You've got also limitations on the size of rooms. So if you put insulated plasterboard on the inside, the room might become too small to let then. So that's another consideration. But EPCs have got to get to a level C. What they're saying and proposing is if you can't get to a C, you've got to do your best and spend at least £10,000 per property in order to do this. Again, I think this is not well thought out by the government. If you have a house in Chelsea, £10,000 is nothing. And it really won't hit the landlords there that are getting £10,000 a month in rent. But if you rent a property in Grimsby and you get £400 a month in rent, that's going to make a massive difference. And that's going to be a couple of years worth of the gross rent. I think they need to look at some sort of compromise on this. Ironically, it's only landlords that need to do this. What about all the residential properties? No one's forcing normal people that live in a house to improve their EPC rating. So this will be interesting. Again, this is another thing that multiple landlords on this channel are saying, this is it, I'm out. This is not what I want to do. Labour this week as well have been talking a lot about Airbnb. I made a video this morning that went out this morning. Actually, I made it yesterday, but it went out this morning. And I believe that you could start seeing more Airbnb properties being banned. Now, this might sound unlikely, but Barcelona is doing exactly that. Barcelona is outlawing Airbnb. They've got a couple of years to get prepared for that because there is not enough rental stock for the locals to live in Barcelona. London already has a 90-day limit. But still, even with that, in the West End, 20% of the properties in the West End are Airbnb or something similar to that. So this is something that we've really got to keep an eye on. If you run service accommodation, or you're thinking about it, you want to keep abreast of this. Maybe they'll make some sort of license scheme. That means if you do run an Airbnb, maybe it's better for you because the higher the barrier to entry to do this, then you could potentially benefit from that because it makes it harder for other people to join. So keep an eye on Airbnb. Potentially, it could be something that Labour talk about banning as well. I think there's a good chance on that. Mortgage rates. Good month for mortgage rates. We had tons of rates going down. We're expecting more to go through. The market is really, really competitive at the moment. You've got all the big cheap lenders, the Mortgage Works, Nationwide, Barclays, NatWest. These guys have been the cheapest lenders for the last few months. And every few days, they're cutting their interest rates. That's really, really positive for people like you and like me. For buy-to-let, you can get a mortgage rate with the Mortgage Works for 3.49%, which is really good. There's fees on top of that, so go and check that out. And for residential, there are deals at 3.74% with fees on top of that as well. But this is significantly better than a year and a half ago when Liz Truss had a mini budget and we were looking at rates then at 6.5%, 7%. One of you commented on here the other day, maybe you're watching now, saying you're paying 8% interest. So the fact that we've moved down this far and we're still moving down is positive. What also leads into that is interest rate cuts around the world. So the Federal Reserve has cut 0.5%. They're likely to cut 0.5% again. That gives the Bank of England a lot of wiggle room. Remember, the 1st of August, the Bank of England cut our rate by 0.25%. The Americans went for half, so we could still cut by 1/4 and just match them. But if they go down by another half, that means we're 0.75 more expensive than them, and that potentially means a bigger cut could happen. In fact, in the news today, which I'll be making a more detailed video about later this week, the Bank of England have said that they could cut rates soon and more aggressively. That's their language that they're using this week. That's interesting language that you really want to hear if you want a cheaper rate, but probably not so good for the economy and jobs. If they're using that language, it means they're probably expecting the economy to start shrinking faster than they were expecting, and maybe unemployed people the unemployment rate to start going up. So the Federal Reserve went down 0.5%. The ECB, the European Central Bank, went down 0.25% this month. So 2 drops, no drop from us, but the language is saying it's coming. The next meeting is early November, and I'm certain, really confident, that the Bank of England is going to cut rates then as well. So you put that into the mortgage rate war, then potentially you could see some more cuts on the way. What else has happened this month? Well, inflation data was out. It's stuck at 2.2%. 2.2%, which was actually good because the expectation was that the inflation could go back up to 2.5%. The expectation is by the end of this year, it was initially from the Bank of England meeting that I listened into, they were talking about inflation could hit 2.7% by the end of this year. We've only got a few months left now. We've only got a few reports left and we're at 2.2. They were expecting 2.5, so it is better than their expectations. Oil has been down. It is up because of what's going on with Iran at the moment, but it is down because consumption of oil is down. We're not going to get so much oil movement and stuff like that. Here's another thing with the oil. In America, the docks are closed. They're on strike. That means there's going to be a lot of big ships just sitting, waiting for that to happen. They'll have come from China or Africa or somewhere like that, and they'll be sitting waiting to dock, maybe for weeks or months. They're not going to be moving, so they're not going to be using oil. And I've looked at this, and a lot of analysts are saying that could mean consumption could drop massively, maybe dropping the price of oil even more once you take out the Iran and Israel problem. And hopefully that de-escalates. That's not what we want, obviously, for that to go crazy over there. So inflation is better, but it's not where it needs to be. It needs to get back down to that 2%, the 2% stuff. House prices. This was interesting as well. So house prices are up for the month, 0.7%. which is a big jump. It is a really, really big jump, 0.7%. And on an annual basis, we've got 3.5% up for the year. That is a really positive movement in the right direction. Now, if we look at the data and break the data down, obviously, you can look on Rightmove and you can see there are some asking prices that are down at the moment. That is normal though. We haven't seen that so much over the last few years because the market has been pretty good, particularly in COVID times. And so the market is open to offers at the moment. It is quite good to be a buyer at the moment. But the deals that maybe you're seeing on Rightmove, because someone in the comments will always say, in my area, everything is reduced. Well, maybe not. I'd actually challenge you to go and look on Rightmove and look at the average house price in your area and look at the average property. So don't look at the high end. The high end is definitely down. The lower end is quite strong in the market at the moment. And have a look through 20 properties there and see how many of them actually are reduced. Because it might be that you're listing by oldest property or you're listing by the most expensive property. Have a look at the actual data on the average prices where most people live. You might not see so many reductions, or maybe you do. I'm open to that as well. But the data is suggesting that right now house prices are moving up and the market is busier at the moment. Estate agents have got more sellers, but they've also got significantly more buyers at the moment. Mortgage approvals are up. The mortgage approvals are the busiest they've been since 2022. So that indicates those mortgage approvals, the people that have got a mortgage offer in principle, they can go shopping now. Well, the last thing that I want to cover is 6 times salary. And that means there are multiple lenders now that will lend you 6 times your salary. For some people, that means instead of buying a 500 grand house, they could afford a £750,000 house. Now, that will work at all levels of the market as well. Maybe if you were looking at a 200 grand house, maybe you can buy a 300 grand house now. And that, in my opinion, will push the market or stabilize it at the very least. If people can afford to buy more, generally people buy the most expensive property they can afford with their budget. And with interest rates coming down and salaries going up and houses are down a little bit over the last couple of years, affordability is improving. With the Bank of England set to cut rates again this year before we finish and mortgage rates still coming down, affordability will continue to improve and that could stabilise the market. We don't know for sure until we actually see the numbers. We can guess and hypothesise all we want, but it's looking fairly robust, the market at the moment, particularly with all the new buyers that are in. So look, lots has happened this month. What stands out to you, or have I missed something? Do comment below. I know it's a longer video here than normal, but there was so much here that we needed to go through and just remind ourselves. Now, all of these topics and content, I've made videos individually on this over the last few weeks. If you're new to the channel, or maybe you just want to recap, maybe click on the logo of the channel somewhere below here, then click on videos and you can see all the content that we've made. Go and check out the Renters' Rights Bill. Go and check out the EPC stuff. They've been particularly popular this month. Or if you want a cracking mortgage deal, go and look at some content around that. Make sure you smash like, tick or like, do something to that like button, whether it's with anger or love, and check out all the other content on my channel, including this video right here.